Hello everybody, and welcome to another video about Navia. This time about the version 3 buffs that she has received today. And, well, without much further ado, how about we get into what changed, shall we? Well, it's mainly been multiplier buffs, a pretty big buff to her elemental skill, and a very minor nerf to her elemental burst, which honestly has such little effect, I don't even know why they, put it there in the fucking first place. And then also a buff to her artifact set and her constellations. Her ease multiplier has been buffed by around 150% at talent level 10, and then her ultimate has been nerfed by about 1% on both the skill damage and the support damage. This is a pretty sizable buff to Navia in my opinion, being around a 10% buff to her personal damage when we ignore the constellation buffs and the set buff. I think it was a very good way to handle Navia buffs, because her kit is mainly centered around her elemental skill. So, this elemental skill being buffed will also indirectly buff her weapon and her constellations, which mainly focus on this skill. And then her ultimate nerf basically did nothing. It's like less than 20,000 damage in the rotation, kind of nothing. So, yeah, we could safely just ignore it, to be honest. Her constellations getting buffed was a big thing that I wanted, and now, because her C1's energy gain was buffed, it's now doable to do double ultimate in a rotation, as long as you have enough energy recharge. And honestly, well, if you run a team with Albedo, Farina, and Bennett, you are going to be fine with around 140% energy recharge, which is enough energy recharge to the point where it's not big enough of a damage loss, and is actually a damage gain if you manage to do it. Her C2's crit rate got buffed from 24% to 36%. A pretty minor buff, but I'm glad it's there, because, well, her C2 was really fucking disappointing. And then her C6 got buffed from 105% crit damage to 135. So how much has this shifted her power level? Gonna be honest, not much, because she was already good in the first place, contrary to what people were saying. She now has even more front-loaded damage, which she didn't really need, but sure, go ahead, give her some more. But overall, she's kind of the same. She went from being a decently above average unit to a pretty strong carry, and honestly, I'm willing to say she's a top 5 carry in the game now. She's stronger than both Cyno and Raiden in their single-target teams, and likely, sadly, will not beat Nuvlet or Itham. But at least she's closer now. Like, I'm willing to compare her Linny, but I haven't really calculated Linny, so I'm not that sure about that comparison. Her E buff also did buff her constellations and signature indirectly. And the signature is, actually best in slot now, but it's still not worth pulling, because her Refinement 5 Serpent Spine is less than 1% worse. Like, what the fuck is this? Serpent Spine is overtuned. But you can still see that Navia does have a bit of a problem with free-to-play weapons. She still doesn't really have that many good ones. Her constellations went from being absolute dog water to actually being pretty good, with her C6 being on par with C6s during the Inazuma period. At C6, she can do 30 million DPR, because since her E refunds her stacks from her skill, you're able to pull out a third elemental skill, which is a massive amount of damage. If you want a good comparison as to how good 3 million DPR is, and that is just her personal DPR, not even accounting for Farina, Raiden does around 2 million DPR when she's at C2 or C3, and the rest of her constellations don't really buff her damage, so that's kind of irrelevant. Navia's C2 is, however, still disappointing. But with Navia's personal damage being increased due to, the E buff, the need for buffers is higher and the need for additional sub-DPS is lower. Therefore, Albedo is no longer best in slot with her, and it's now Zhongli, assuming that Crystallize goes your way, which, to be honest, it might just not. The signature set was buffed by about 10% geo damage, but it's still slightly behind Marechaussee Hunter, because, well, what the fuck is Marechaussee Hunter? This set is insane. It's kind of shocking that Navia's signature set even comes close, to be honest. I would say that her pros and cons are also still the same, except for the fact that the vertical investment is better now. So everything that you heard me say on C0 Navia is, still pretty true, honestly. But I'm still not fully satisfied with Navia's kit. I still think her C1 should be changed, because outside of the double burst strategy, it's literally useless. Because with single burst, she has literally 0 ER requirements if you have C1, and even at C0 her ER requirements are very low, and then if you are going for single burst, the cooldown reduction does literally nothing. The weapon is still a bit underwhelming, but at least it's best in slot now, instead of being fucking second place. Like, come on, Mahoya, how did that even get past quality control? But, of course, I would love to still see more buffs, but I'm very happy with how she's currently looking. And I know I've kinda already covered it with the Albedo and Zhongli thing, but have her best teams actually changed much? Well, I wouldn't say much, but the importance of buffing your Navia has increased, because, well, her damage is higher, so buffing that damage is going to be more impactful now. So characters like Ningguang who are able to run Pring Dorsal Dragon Slayers and also buff her Geo damage with her A4 are going to be especially better now compared to running just another sub-DPS character. So yeah, her best teams have changed. And also characters like C6 Goro who are able to buff her crit damage, or characters like Yun Jin who are able to buff her normal attacks. Although her normal attacks haven't really been buffed by much, but still, it's something. There is also, of course, GOMC with a little bit of buffing, but at that point you're just kind of reaching. Now, is she free-to-play friendly? I would have to say no, she's not. Because her weapon options are quite limited for free-to-plays, because, well, she's a damn Claymore character, and most of her good teammates are 5 stars, mainly being Farina, Yelan, and then Zhongli or Albedo. But she is still very strong at C0, although her weapon options are a bit limited. If I had to say anything, I'd say the Battle Pass to get Serpent Spine is pretty good, but, obviously that's still money, and a lot of people want to just stay pure free-to-play. I would have to say she is mainly a single-target character due to the double damage on her E if everything hits one target, but her AoE isn't completely horrible. If I would have to compare it to someone, I would compare it to Alhaitham, where technically there is some AoE going on, yes, but it is mainly single target. Is she worth running over other options? Well, yeah, kinda. She has her own unique strengths and weaknesses, mainly being the fact that she has so much front load, while also having higher DPS than most, well, carry units. So, yeah, I'd say she definitely has some pros that make her more worth it than other options. For example, she definitely has a lot more front-loaded damage than Alhaitham, and she is also a lot easier to play. But Nuvolette just kinda destroys the entire carry meta, so honestly, if I had to recommend going for any carry, I would still say it's Nuvolette. But that's going to be all from me. Peace.